Zenybody in here for May 4th, 2018. Episode 12B, Part 2 of an interview with Michael Williams, a theater director. We're some guys who hung out together for a few years, then decided to start a podcast. We don't adhere to any format. We do interviews, social commentary, or any subject we think can make a show, designed to make you think and laugh. Email ZenybodyInHere at ZenybodyInHere@gmail.com. Facebook, ZenybodyInHere at ZenybodyInHerePodcast. Our webpage is ZenybodyInHere.com. And send a voicemail or text to 256-401-7140. That's 256-401-7140. To donate to Zenybody in Here, you can do it at the patreon.com. Look us up, Zenybody in Here. On this show, we discuss, in addition to interviewing Michael Williams, we discuss plays and movies. But this is part 2. So if you haven't heard part 1, go back and listen to episode 12 so you get a start from the beginning. And here's our host, Adam Baker, Kevin Trotter, Tim Icourt, with special guest, Michael Williams.
Oh, yeah, I got a bone to pick.
Yeah, I got a bone to pick with you, too.
Yeah, you shut up. I'm going to do my bone first.
Is this about the longest running show in television where you also botched that one up?
This is not trivia related. This is, you were just talking about guest artists or whatever you were saying.
Getting a guest artist to come to this area.
I'm sitting right here. I've been begging you for 2 years to get into one of these shows. What's going on?
The guest artists who come in are guest artists I use for teaching.
I could teach. I wouldn't know what I was talking about, but I could do it.
Once again, enough has been said.
I used to teach math, if that helps, but I don't think
I could teach journalism.
You know, and you know, talk about a dying art right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
And it's such a shame right now because most journalism programs have been swallowed up by communication departments.
Yeah.
And the communication departments, it's moved a step further because, you know, journalism, it just doesn't pay. You meet a journalist today and you know, it's kind of like meeting a working actor. It's like, you know, when I'm not acting, this is my other job.
Yeah, and it really, unless you land in just the right spot.
For those who haven't, I don't know if any of you guys have seen the movie Spotlight, which won the Oscar a couple of years ago. Spotlight was about the investigative journalism team that put together a multi-part series on the Boston child molestation issues concerning the Catholic Church. Okay. That story today, they couldn't pull off because that paper would not have the funding to pay these people for over a year without producing anything.
Right, yeah.
And for over a year to do interviews all over the country, to track people down, to have 5 people earning a livable wage, to do the research, to basically, you know, call out an incredible wrong is almost impossible. And it's also true that, you know, Watergate's questionable. They had pulled it off. Would you pay 2 25 and 26-year-old reporters a livable wage
to do nothing other than investigate something for an extended period of time?
And that's part of the thing right now. And so when you look at communication departments today, they're made of mass communication. They're made of interpersonal communication. And your PR. Yep. You know, your PR people are coming out of there. And then you've got your journalism. And your journalists are the smallest group in those communication departments today, because your mass communication, you know, they're learning television, video editing, sound editing.
Right.
You know, they're basically, you know, learning a trade more than anything. And then your interpersonal are going to be, you know, your HR personnel and everything. Moving on in the business world, it's basically almost like a sidebar business degree for, you know, people in the humanities. And then you know, but when you get to the journalism, that's also a trade. And that doesn't really get addressed anymore. It's like trying to get a degree in photojournalism. You know, they don't have photojournalists anymore because, you know, you don't have to be able to work in a darkroom. You don't have to know how to treat film anymore. You know, you can now take 100 photos on a small drive and throw out 99 of them, and it doesn't cost you anything.
That's right.
True.
And so, and journalism today, well, I hate to say this, but, you know, our current resident in the White House, you know, he'll quote a blog some guy wrote who has about as much, journalism, quote
Right.
unquote,
Yep.
as 3 out of 4 of us sitting at this table.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing about
I'm the one of 4.
We're talking about
Excellent.
Adam as the exception.
yeah, Adam's the exception on this one.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about bringing in guest artists and stuff like that, we've brought in a handful of guest artists that I've known from Louisiana or Atlanta, and they come and usually teach for a week and take over a week of the classes. And we've brought in one guest
Yeah, I
artist.
could do that. I think I could. I could
You're
fudge
just
my way
wanting
through a week.
break. That's what it is.
Yeah, you're just trying to kick
Well,
back for a while.
I realize you probably don't get a break.
Well, I sat down and did the math, and I think if I got a job at McDonald's, I'd probably make more per hour.
And be a lot happier.
So, speaking of that, I was listening to this new podcast. I can't remember the name of it. I'll put
Oh,
it in
it's
the notes.
Zip. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There you
Anyway,
go.
he interviewed a guy who was he did a show about pirate radio back in the day. Like they're saying it cost $75 million to start a radio station, basically, some unbelievable sum like that. And these guys were doing it, a free radio station, about a couple $100 to build a station and stuck it out the window. But I mean, nowadays, the dumbasses like us are making a podcast that actually is heard in right now United Kingdom and Sweden. We've got a couple listeners there.
And Arkansas.
In Arkansas and all over the United States. And this ain't cost. We probably didn't spend a couple $100 on all this crap.
It's the same with
Well-
YouTube.
Well,
Yeah.
but that along those lines, Uber and taxi drivers, like it's the same concept where this technology has created this availability to otherwise untrained people to do what
Well,
the
it's-
quote trained people are doing and
Yeah.
paying a lot of money to do, like taxi drivers.
Yeah.
To get a taxi driver's license is
Well, that's why-
ridiculously expensive.
That's why a taxi medallion in New York's about $200,000.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Once you got the medallion, you've got it for the rest.
Damn.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
realize
because that medallion is basically you've bought your business. As long as you have the medallion, that's a cab. Now there is the term gypsy cab or black cab that is used by that existed before Uber and before Lyft, and it was for people who would show up at the airport and hold up a sign, "Hey, you need a ride." And they'd give you a ride. And the taxi cab, JFK to downtown, a flat rate's about $40.
So
you
in
put it
England
down.
they have the black cabs, but that's like their official cab.
Yeah, well, that's the
different.
English thing, but that in England they call them gypsy cabs
Okay.
for unregulated cabs.
Do not shrink me with your trinkets. Thank you, Gypsy.
Good accent.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, it's
Well, you're talking about journalism, though. What I got to give this example before we get too far off the topic. Recently, because of cutbacks at the Denver Post, this is a major daily newspaper. The cutbacks in the sports department. It's the beginning of baseball season, and so they have this special portion of their newspaper. It's a welcome to the baseball season for the Colorado Rockies, and it's this big giant picture of the stadium on the cover of this insert, this special section that they're doing. And on the cover of the insert is a picture of the Philadelphia Phillies stadium for the Denver Post. They messed up the main picture. They didn't realize that it was a difference between their own stadium and a stadium in Philadelphia.
And that's a tragedy, considering that all 4 of us could probably hit a home run in Coors Stadium.
Or Philadelphia. They're both bandboxes. But I mean, and a lot of people were attributing the fact they made this mistake because they had this string of layoffs and they're not
The
people that are trained to
local
look for that
the
kind of
local
stuff.
paper for New Orleans is the Times-Picayune. The Times-Picayune, one of the best descriptions was a reporter for the New York Times once said about the city of New Orleans: bad police force, bad government, good paper. And I always thought that was quite poetic because that paper broke so many stories in the city about corruption. It was they didn't get many favors from City Hall.
Right.
It was a great paper. That paper was bought out, and the company that bought it attempted and did for a while. They took it down from a daily paper to 3 days a week. So you got a paper on Monday, a paper on Thursday, and a paper on
This is
Sunday.
the newspaper in a major metropolitan area.
And it was the last, because there's no more paper wars. I mean, you've got the New York Post and the New York Times. the
But that's
Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun. But there isn't like the 4 or 5 papers battling it out for market share anymore. So the Times-Picayune is the only major paper in the city, and they cut it down to 3. Well, the Advocate, which is the newspaper for Baton Rouge, came down to New Orleans, hired all the journalists that had been laid off by the Times-Picayune, and started having the New Orleans Advocate, a New Orleans section for the paper. And it has driven the Times-Picayune back into publishing every day, because the nickname that they had picked up was the Sometimes-Picayune.
Very clever.
And it was. And the Advocate picked up a lot of slack that was occurring, and it didn't have to do much to do this because the infrastructure of journalists were already there, and they had just been laid off by the Times-Picayune. And so the Times-Picayune let go of some people who had been, covering crime for 20 years.
You're talking about experts in a certain field
Yeah.
that have the contacts, have the established network to do good reporting, and they're just sitting there on the sidelines. Somebody comes in, swoops them in, and says, "Hey, come do this for me."
When I think about, everybody who, it's so funny. When I first moved to Alabama, I moved to Wadley.
That is funny.
That is funny.
Yeah, I know.
Sad.
But everybody, I'm
funny.
they're making copies of the IDs and everything. And everybody's telling us, be careful. There was a burglary the other night, and people are telling you, oh man, it gets dangerous. You don't want to go on this side of town and stuff. And I'm like, town? This is not a town. This is,
There is no side. There's one side. There's only one side.
And people are like, yeah, this is the area. And same thing about here in Roanoke.
Yeah.
In Roanoke, you go a few blocks this way, and everybody's like, what are you doing here? You don't really fit into this area. And then you go a few blocks this way, and everybody's like, well, you're in the right spot now.
Well, you should see me riding a bicycle around. I can really cover some distance, and I get strange looks from everybody.
Well,
Oh, hey, me too. Running through
Oh, I
the
bet,
the
yeah.
neighborhoods.
Yeah, I saw you run the other day with a white T-shirt on. I said, I just started thinking about your white T-shirt in the other previous podcast.
White T-shirt.
oh
For
man.
those of you who had listened.
That one stayed with me.
So
So what, brown by the time you got home?
It wasn't brown. And lost in the woods.
the newspaper story, that's basically Citizen Kane.
Well, in some ways it is. The thing is that Kane is fighting to become a conglomerate, and the Times-Picayune was a conglomerate. And it, when I think about the stories that it broke, and we had a guy named Adolph Archie, and he was killed by the police after he had shot a cop, and they had said he had fallen out a window, and the Times-Picayune had gotten hold of a private autopsy performed outside of Orleans Parish, where there were boot prints, that were bruising all the way through. Mm-hmm. And this was going on for a while, or we had several cases. We had a guy named Ornis Buckner, who actually turned state's evidence, and it was kind of comedic because the state legislature actually said, well, since Buckner's admitted to participating and everyone else says they were innocent, we should just punish Buckner for turning state's evidence because we know he's guilty. And
So backwards.
And these sort of logic things happen all the time. And then you take a look at the paper, and the paper that existed for so long was that paper that would break these stories. And we had one for a while, and when this one broke, nobody ever loses their job in Louisiana, no matter how incompetent or bad they are. And,
That's good to know.
That sounds familiar to actually.
And there was one where Tulane University, private university in the city of New Orleans, gave every state representative, I think it was 3 scholarships a year that they could give out to anybody, and the mayor of New Orleans got 5, and every city council member got, I think, 2. And nobody knew about this, but as a result, all their families were going to Tulane for free. The mayor sent his son for free. There was no oversight or anything. It was part of the agreements, handshakes. The city gave up certain things so Tulane could get some breaks and moving up property and stuff like that. And in return, lawmakers got these scholarships that were valued over $100,000, and they had them for as long as they were in office. And
all right, I'm going to jump in here because this brings up a moral / political
But before you jump in, though, it was the paper that broke that.
Right.
And it was the paper that pointed out, that, they're giving it to their children when, these scholarships could go to people who actually need scholarships, unlike
All
people
right, you're answering my question, but why is that wrong? But here, let me elaborate on my question. Because this country...
doing the redneck thing again?
Yeah, I'm doing the redneck advocate. This here country runs...
Don't talk like that.
on Duncan.
Every political system runs on favors like that, and if it's good for the university and it's good for the city that the mayor is happy and the university gets to use the city park or whatever they were getting in return. Yes, I acknowledge that it's a corrupt exchange of goods, but in the bigger picture, what's really wrong with it?
Well, what's really wrong with it is the fact that it existed, and it was never publicly written, and it was never publicly announced. If
Right, but
if
so
you
what?
grow up,
Who cares?
if you grow
Like-
up in a district and that representative has a scholarship that they can give to Tulane, and you're a really good student, shouldn't you know that so you can write for a scholarship to Tulane?
But that's not the reason that was given to that. There are plenty of public scholarship competitions that are available to students to apply for. That was not the reason that was given to that guy.
No, this was a political maneuver.
Exactly. So what? But still,
But
like
it's like...
you
so
scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
It's a little
Yes,
different,
but-
though. You do a job, you get paid, compensated.
Yeah.
Why should extended people involved with you benefit from the work you're doing?
Why shouldn't they?
Well, what makes it unethical, and I use the word unethical, knowing that a redneck may find the word dubious and complicated,
Don't talk that pig Latin, boy.
and the issue to it is that Tulane, being an
I love this
educational
shit.
Tulane, being an educational institution, is given certain tax breaks. Those tax breaks require it, just like any nonprofit, to disclose their finances. If I'm giving out $100,000 scholarships, I am basically giving a person $100,000. That $100,000 is actually taxable for the amounts that are not being used toward tuition and fees, whatever else it goes into. As a result, people are not paying taxes, and as you argue and say, yes, but it's helping everybody, it's not actually helping everybody. It's helping those who actually don't need much help.
That's true, directly, but not in a quantifiable sense. Yes, you're right. But
We should look at this really
Quantifiable is how we,
loosey-goosey.
judge almost everything because it can be quantified.
math.
Otherwise, we're looking at things in hypotheticals. And once we're looking in hypotheticals,
but not everything can be quantified.
you are correct, not everything.
But
But
this can.
for a long time, people could say,
Those dollars can be quantified.
yes, they can be $100,000
There's
down.
100,000 of them. That's a quantity.
Yes, and today I would say that same scholarship today. This was in the '80s. It broke. That same scholarship today is probably about $150,000, $175,000. That sort of money that you're handing out, if a public official who has been elected to represent is handing out that money, and if a institution that the city is not collecting taxes from is awarding that money where taxpayers are now subsidizing issues that a private college is doing, and yet the private college is not paying taxes because it is also tax exempt as well as making money, then perhaps those issues need to be highlighted and pointed out as they were by the Times-Picayune, which was employing real reporters who don't see the ethical challenge and instead see the
You see how he
ethical
brought that
dilemma.
story full circle?
Yeah.
This is brilliant
So,
storytelling.
what's the name of that park across from Tulane? I think I went
That
there
is
last-
Audubon Park.
Yeah, I went
It
there last-
actually
It's a hell of a
belongs.
park.
It actually
it?
belongs to Tulane,
It does?
and
Okay.
it is leased to the city for like 200 years for about $1 a year.
That's an amazing park. I went there when I was...
John Audubon of the Audubon Society. We have the Audubon Zoo.
got a golf course in the middle of it and like a lake, and just amazing.
That's pretty
It goes on
And
forever.
That's awesome.
but it's the
It's kind of like the country club here in town is what you're talking about.
Well, a little bit nicer, but
Paul Tulane.
Theoretically.
He owned the property that Audubon Park's on, Audubon Zoo, Tulane, and Loyola. They sold the property to Loyola.
See,
to the
you're
church.
saying Audubon. I think most people around here would say Autobahn.
Audubon.
Yeah.
Yeah, John J. Audubon.
Yeah, but the way you're saying it could be confusing
To Ottoman.
to
To a footrest? What's going on here?
or the
John J.
Empire. Let's
Footrest.
give fair space. But Audubon, it's AUD.
Oh. Can you
Et
use
cetera,
it in
et
a
cetera.
sentence?
The Audubon Society is always how I heard it pronounced.
These
Audubon.
reporters are
Oh,
nerds, you know.
Speaking of reporters and mispronouncing words, what would you guys be curious for me to do some investigative reporting on when I move away
Oh.
to the northwest?
Will you have time to do investigative reporting?
I will be like most second-rate investigators.
You should call in on a regular basis.
And report
And
to
report.
us what you find.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to.
Whatever it is.
Oh, we
I
have we have a number you can call, and you can leave your messages.
That's 256 7
Some.
six,
I need to maintain the
4-1.
the trade-in value of my new phone, so I don't want to use it that much.
256-401-7140. You can leave up to a 3-minute message.
3 minutes, Adam.
3 minutes.
Kevin, you're really digging yourself a grave, like allowing people to do this.
No, this
Hey.
is gonna be like a mind expanding drug.
I can't remember
for
the name.
uh,
I can't remember the name of this.
And ladies and
podcast.
gentlemen, we have a man who knows a lot about mind-expanding drugs.
yes, we do. Not me.
Where is Bill when you need him?
Yeah.
Bill.
Did we ever say where Bill was?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
He was
I don't know.
while I was late.
during his
He's at a
fatherly
hospice.
duties.
Oh.
No.
He'd appreciate that one. But
Bill is currently being milked.
Yes, more or less.
you can milk man's nipples. Many people don't realize that.
He's having some issues with it. It's been.
Kevin, do you know about this personally?
Yes. I'm
told-
lactating at the moment.
I thought you were referring to the time where Bill told us he was lactating.
Oh, Bill's lactating too.
I didn't know you were as well. Yeah, so he's having like a medical issue. It's not a big deal, but he lactates some, and
Yeah.
he's getting it dealt with tonight.
Isn't tonight his vasectomy?
Yeah.
No, his feet are webbed.
Unfortunately, he's too late for that because
Well, he's a one and done.
he's going to a birthing class.
The Lamaze.
Le Mans class is what
Not
it is.
Lamans.
Le Mans.
Lamaze.
But
Are you
Isn't
saying
Le Mans a
Autobahns?
race? Isn't that part of the Formula
Yeah, the
One
Lamans
circuit?
is like a Formula One. It's like IndyCar racing.
but
Bill,
speaking of,
Bill is in Paris.
there's a show I listen to called Serial Talk where they talk about cults, conspiracies, and the paranormal. They have a call-in line where they play whatever somebody sends, and it is hilarious.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can get some eventually interesting.
That's
calls.
what we need. We
It's
need.
just insane stuff. Some guy called and
Actually,
started singing a song.
you got a net on your phone?
Do you have a fishing net on your phone?
Yeah. If you could look at
Wait, you call it the net?
yeah.
It's old school.
That is old school terminology
Kevin,
right
do
there.
you have
What
the
should I
dark-
call
The
it?
dark web.
The dark.
The dark web. Ooh.
He calls it the net.
Uh,
That's like that's that Sandra Bullock movie.
Yeah.
Bullock.
Alamo Draft House.
It's Sandra Bullock and
Stop
George
correcting me,
Clooney.
Adam.
And if you could pull
Jorge.
up their pre-show announcement.
What are you pulling up?
Alamo Draft House pre-show announcement. I've always wanted to use it before one of my shows, but it ain't happening here.
Well, we
He
can't
net-
play it on the air, can we?
He doesn't have the net.
Is it free use?
They play it before every one of their movies,
Okay.
and they've put it online. And I assure you, this
you
is not
saying
something that
movies?
they're going to have a heart attack over.
Yeah.
What word are you pronouncing? This is the sound of Kevin surfing the net
You see
on
it?
his phone.
I've got their website.
No. Just go to YouTube and look for
YouTube, okay.
Alamo Draft House pre-show.
Kevin, do you know how to use the net?
No.
No.
Apparently not.
I'm just an IT guy, so I don't know a lot about computers.
I'll just work.
So we'll talk about
He's
Neuromancer
a
for the next
lactating IT guy.
Alamo what? Draft House?
Alamo Draft House. It's a movie theater chain.
Pre-show?
There's Pre-show announcement.
It's remember
Okay.
the.
Don't talk angry voice.
Alamo.
Alamo Draft House pre-shows.
Turn it toward me so I can just see which
That's
one.
good.
Yeah, the top
How
one.
much trouble are we going to get in for that?
I think
None.
he said to
Bill's
the.
going to love this.
Yeah, Bill will.
How's it playing back? Okay.
What?
text at the Alamo Drafthouse Cinema, you'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too.
No, not that one. Is that the first one?
Yeah.
Whoa, that was trippy.
That was so tricky. Okay. Draft House, Don't Talk PSA, Angry Voicemail,
Yeah,
Uncensored?
it's a voicemail.
Okay.
This is what they actually play.
Take two.
Now, please understand, what you can't see right now on the screen is them saying that, you're not supposed to talk during our movies or use your
I
phone.
was wondering if you guys actually enjoy treating your customers like pieces of shit, because that's how I felt when I went to the Alamo Draft House. Okay? You know what? I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to text in your little crappy ass theater. It was too fucking dark in that place for me to find my seat, alright? I was using my phone as a flashlight to get to my fucking seat. So excuse me for using my phone in USA, my United States of America, where you are free to text in a theater. I was not aware that I couldn't text in your theater, all right? I've texted in all the other theaters in Austin, and no one ever gave a fuck about what I was doing on my fucking phone, all right? And it was on silent. It wasn't on loud. It wasn't bothering anybody. You guys obviously were being assholes to me, and I'm sure that's what you do, to rip people off. You take my money, and then you throw me out. I will never be coming back to your Alamo Draft House or whatever. I'd rather go to a regular theater where people are actually polite. And, I'm going to tell everyone about how shitty you are. And I'm pretty sure you guys are being assholes on purpose. So thanks for making me feel like a customer. Thanks for taking my money, asshole.
And then at the end of that, it says, "You're welcome." And
They
it's
actually play that?
yeah, they
See,
play that
that's
before
the
all their
point.
movies.
We want drunk people like that calling into our
exactly.
podcast and acting like idiots.
Yeah, Alamo Draft House has a strict no talking and no phone when their movie starts.
They kicked her out.
Yeah,
All right.
they actually have people
won't
who
shut up.
wander into the theater,
Stop it. No.
and it's quite wonderful. There's only about 6, maybe 7 of the theaters in the country,
Yeah.
but they have a very tight rule, and also no one under the age of 18 is allowed in their theaters.
That's a good point. That'd help a lot.
Because they serve alcohol,
And they show ghost boobers a lot.
and they have basically a bar for a lobby, and you have a little table at your chair in the theater.
Yeah.
And it's basically a theater where you go where you just want to enjoy the film and go out on a date, and you don't want to put up with a lot of BS.
My wife asked me what one town we want to move to, and I said Austin.
Keep Austin weird.
Yeah, I mean that's it. I think that'd be one of the coolest places to live besides New Orleans. So it'd be a toss up between Austin and New Orleans.
A lot of my friends relocated to Austin after Katrina because it's the only place in Texas they could stand.
Yeah.
Hey, just
I
stating
got
the
my heart
fact.
set on Savannah, Georgia.
Savannah's nice too.
I've never been to either one of those cities.
Which one, Savannah or Austin?
Savannah or Austin.
Well, you need to go to.
Go to Austin first.
I lived in Georgia all my life until I moved here, and I've never been to Savannah.
Savannah's really nice. It's sort of like a clean New Orleans, but it's a little too spread out to walk everywhere. But it's real pretty. But
Biking's good.
No, I like
it doesn't have enough weirdos for my weirdo quota, but it's a nice city.
No, I'm a fan of Savannah. I think
Savannah's
Savannah's
pretty, though.
it's a nice city.
Not like New Orleans. You got the really strange
Actually,
people
I've got
like Michael.
I've got a buddy of mine I went to college now and teaches at SCAD,
Yeah, okay.
and so and I don't think
That's
he would.
Savannah College of Art and Design.
The Scad Bees.
Good.
SCAD Bees.
Not in a con like I mistakenly thought earlier
Well,
in
there
the show.
is a branch of
Oh, there is a
SCAD
branch.
College in
Yeah.
Hong Kong.
Okay, I
Hong
was
Kong
trying to-
is not in Japan.
I got
like I'm
lost
mistaken.
in that, and I just got confused.
Opened in 2009.
So, Adam, you were a student of Michael's.
Yes, and then
Yeah.
I was looking to go to SCAD.
Yeah.
Well, no, I want to talk. I want to know about your experience in his class.
Yeah, let's tell us that.
I
And
only had 1 year as a student of his.
Say whatever you wish. I've heard it all in my life.
did you get cursed out?
Yeah. Were there any
My favorite student review of all time was in New Orleans, where somebody wrote a student review that said he's a Nazi communist clown. And
Pretty good.
Sums it up better than I ever could.
and I remember the
not to put
administration.
words in Adam's mouth, but
The administration wanted to know what that meant, and I said it means whoever wrote that needs a background in political science.
That's really kind of two different things.
Yeah, you can't be both.
Yeah.
No, I got a lot of benefit from the class because there was such a wide range of
What class was it?
life skills taught. The movement was probably my favorite. So a little bit of juggling, tightrope walking.
So can you juggle?
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool. So you did that, you said Wadley?
yeah.
That is neat.
You can walk a tightrope?
Could. I don't know.
Dude,
That is neat.
those are interesting skills.
Rollabola
What's that?
or endo board. You might know that.
No.
You got a tube and a plank, and you're
Oh,
you're
yeah,
standing
I know
on
what
the
you're talking
plank.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. I got the visual now.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Pretty neat. Well,
No, it was telling stories through your body movement. So it's all the training that goes into that, which includes meditation and
Well, one of the things I try to stress is that acting is action. And
non-action.
yeah, and well, being still is a movement. You choose to be it. I like to always quote Jimmy Johnson and say, the mind controls the body doesn't control the mind. And so,
Is that Jimmy Johnson, the Cowboys football coach?
former
That's the sausage.
yeah.
Or the sandwiches.
You eat enough of those, and mind doesn't control the body
The
anymore.
bowels control the body.
Jimmy John's crazy facts.
And yes, it is. But he had some, I thought, real interesting. He and Bill Parcells, actually, Parcells, who one of my favorite quotes is, "This is why we lift all them damn weights."
Yeah.
And it's true. This is why we do all the training. Is the moment the lights actually come up, you're ready. And I always tell people, basic training, you run over the same drill again, and again, and again. And the reason is when the moment arrives, it's automatic. And that's what we do in theater. We do the same things again, and again. And so when the curtain opens, you just go. You're not debating
the
it.
repetition was really good for me, and it's probably the single greatest thing in my life to allow me to look at the world in a different way or a better way than I was looking at it. So everything that I learned in class directly transferred over into me enjoying my day-to-day more.
That's why, to me, what you just said is why the arts, and particularly performance arts and athletics, are very similar.
Well-
you were quoting football coaches for things that apply to your field.
Well, I also I use Parcells and I use Johnson. I use but also Clausewitz, who wrote the book On War. It's one of the first.
It's a communist thing. I don't know.
Nah, he was
It's a Nazi communist.
he
thing.
was pre-American Revolution, but he's most famous for saying war is diplomacy by other means.
Right,
But
yeah, that's a
in
famous
his
quote.
writings that he talks about the most dangerous thing you have is the motivated individual. If you have somebody who's individually motivated, one person can take on multiple people if he's got a cause. And I talk about in the fact in the theater, every character has a motivation, something that moves them. And so if you've got something that really is pushing you, you can do this. And so and also Che Guevara's book on guerrilla warfare. We talk about the fact that if you don't have a lot of money, it's like fighting in a guerrilla war. You fight with what you've got. You adapt to the commercialism that you can to get your word out. You try and rally people and get the community to back you up. And if you do that, word of mouth is and has always been the greatest thing you'll
grassroots.
It's grassroots that established Cuba for 50 years. It started with people saying, "Hey, you're getting a raw deal," and people looking around saying, "Hey, you're right, it's a raw deal. I'll join you." And so, there's a lot of things I pull from, but the arts, academics, and athletics are all tied together. If you go far enough with them, they all start to sound the same as far as what we're trying to accomplish.
Would you say your teaching style has changed a lot? Because it was your first year at the college when it was my second year there.
Well, I had taught a long time before I got to the college.
I was specifically thinking about any limitations you might have had coming into a new college and the place where it was at.
They were very hesitant, and one of the biggest issues that we suffer from is when I showed up, the previous individuals, they would use class time to run rehearsals. And to me, this is really not in the best service of anybody. Rehearsals happen, it's kind of like, practice on the college level. You have your classes and you hit your weight room, and then you have your practice, and and then you rinse and repeat. Well, our classes are totally independent of our production.
I'd say if you don't have good time management, you're not going to make it in one of Michael's classes.
And all the students in the class are not necessarily in the show,
That's
right?
what I was wondering.
Well, I do my best to get as many of the performers on stage, but not
the
everybody
people that want to be in it.
But the thing is that not everybody I always like to say theater's a big house, and not everybody is there to do the same thing. This last year, I had a girl who wanted to be a designer, and I've had people who want to be stage managers, and I've had people want to go into costuming, and all that's in the theater also. And people wonder what it takes to be a good director, and I think of Chuck Knoll, when they were asking, what do you want to be remembered?
Pittsburgh Steelers.
I would say Chuck
Steelers.
Norris.
And they were asking him, how does he want to be remembered? And they were asking not only him, but Don Shula. And Shula was, I want to be remembered as a coach who, was able to accomplish certain things. And, when they got to Noel, and he said, I'd like to be remembered as a teacher. And people don't realize Noel's undergraduate and graduate work was in education. And
What a loser.
yeah, I know. Well, education degree. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because education degrees have fallen greatly. Today, education, most people get a degree in it because they want to have job security, and they look at it as something that the country needs a lot of. And
I would say most people that become a teacher, at least in my small world, hate children.
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
well, that's just it, though, is that I find that the best teachers don't have degrees in education. The best history teachers have degrees in history. They're interested in the subject. The best science teachers have degrees in biology or
I will give
geology.
a counterpoint to that. The best math teacher I have ever had was not good at math.
Well, it's not about being good, it's about being interested.
Yeah.
It's about being
And conveying
inspired
the
by it.
passion that you have about a certain topic.
Yeah, I've got my master's in math, and I love teaching, and I want to go back to that one day once I retire. I plan to definitely do that some more.
Yeah,
It was really enjoyable. I like that.
You have a master's in math?
Yeah.
Yeah, applied mathematics.
Applied mathematics.
God almighty, I'm the dumbest person at this table right now.
I don't know that.
And
I would have to agree.
I'll second that.
I'm getting no argument.
I
I
still,
didn't know that, Kevin. That's pretty cool. That's awesome.
it's just one of those things that if you're passionate about your subject, you're going to do okay. Now, it takes a number of years of doing it to learn how to communicate your passion to others. And
To an extent, I think that what you just said, to communicate it effectively, but I think passion for a subject
passion carries it.
just comes out. I mean,
the passion comes out, but you've got to be able to process it in a way that is edible, for lack of a better word.
just transferable.
Tim, have you ever been a teacher, or even in a relaxed sense? Can you think of a time?
Yeah. I used to teach. What did I do?
If you can't say it on air, it's
Well, while you're thinking, I had a
The aristocrats.
when I was going to Auburn, I had like a physics teacher who was like in a classroom of 300 people, and I'm sure he knew what he was talking about and he liked it, but he couldn't.
Well,
He couldn't explain it.
He
what
couldn't
said.
communicate.
the example.
Okay.
I probably would have thought I was a much better teacher if I would have taught a bigger group. I've taught people how to pack parachutes, and that's been one-on-one, and I've taught people how to ski. Well, small people how to ski.
Like children
Yeah.
or short people?
Both.
Okay.
No,
Little
just
people.
children.
Little people.
But if it was a big class, then I could just talk or convey the message and think I was wonderful. But when it's one-on-one, you really see, like, if you're doing your job as a teacher or not.
The example I give often in the arts, and this is to address Tim's, the passion is great, but passion has to be translated in order to be conveyed. And an example I always give is, and Adam may have heard me give this example before, is during the Renaissance, the two items that were traded most were coffee and spices. And the interesting thing about both of them is that we don't use them in their natural states. We work them into something else, whether it's drying out the saffron, but particularly coffee. Nobody sits down and says, "Pour me a bowl of coffee beans."
Although, have you ever eaten a fresh coffee bean?
Well, yeah,
coffee fruit.
You can get them out of vending machines in California, like gumball machines. And
Yeah,
like
they're
3 of
very
them will come
tasty.
out.
Just the fruit.
But the thing is that
But it's the seed that we
but nobody is going around just grabbing handfuls of coffee beans and going to town on them.
Right.
And the example I give, there are two things. There's technique and there's life, and you need them both to make it work. And the reason I use coffee in this is that water, most of the planet, most of our body, water is really life. And then the bean is the technique. Well, in the theater, you pour a cup of, overseas they often refer to our coffee as like dirty water. But they also refer to our beer as like colored water. So there's a lot of animosity there. But that said,
those damn Americans.
The thing is Carlo Mazzoni Clemente, who was the founder of Del Arte out in California. He was an Italian commedia artist and did a lot of great things in clown and whatnot. And he used to talk about how the Italians make the best coffee, and it was his belief that, being Italian, number one, but number two is because they made their coffee with vapor. And vapor is the hottest point water can get before it gases. And so if you ever look at the very top of boiling water, that little haze that you see there, that's the vapor. And so like for espresso...
Before it turns to steam.
Correct.
Yes.
Before it turns into a gas. And so when it starts to do that, it gets interesting. And so you would talk about the fact that, for life to be interesting for the stage, you got to do something with it. You can't just exist. For a guy to walk out on stage and say hi is one thing. And for a guy to walk out on fire, well, now we're interested. Something's happening here. And now for the coffee bean, Daniel Stein, who is a movement teacher for Brown University, he's a pantomime and mime, came out of Etienne de Cruz School in Paris. Was a very famous place through the 50s and 90s. And he used to go to the same shop every day to get his coffee, and the reason he did was every single day they roasted their own beans, they grinded their own beans, and every day the coffee tastes the same. And if you didn't like their coffee, it wasn't because of some variable, it's because you didn't like that coffee. Go to another shop, but every day it was going to taste like that. And so he always emphasized that the way we work with technique is trying to build consistency. So we do it again and again and again. Same thing with a football drill, a baseball pitch. You do it again and again and again. And so where this finally meets and where you're talking about the passion is that life. I can make it vapor. And it's really interesting at that point. But now we got to do something with it. And the teaching part is the coffee beans, learning how to roast them, learning how to grind them, and then you put those two things together and you got something. If you're just boiling water and you don't have technique, you're not doing theater, you're sitting on a couch with a psychiatrist. And if all you're doing is grinding beans, but you don't have anything, any life behind it, you're not doing a performance, you're doing stretches and calisthenics. It doesn't become a show until you learn to take that life and mix it with technique. So when you walk out on the stage, you understand how to communicate this. And the same thing happens in a classroom. You can walk in there with pure passion, and if you can hold that passion, you will start to learn how to teach over time. You'll get better and better at it. You start to grind your beans. Every day you go in there, you're working at it. Pure passion, though, going in to teach history, you end up, covering everything from the Egyptians to, Napoleon's failure at Waterloo in one day because you think, oh man, I got to tell them everything I need instead of understanding how to structure it where it falls in place and how to move it along. And so passion alone can't do it.
You got to have the technique to to
it's
Go
like
along with it.
how many guys get drafted in the first round who are busts, but they were passionate about football.
or just raw athletes. I mean, it's the same thing. You have that raw athletic skill or whatever it is, then without
With
applying it to your sport, it's no good.
yeah, talent can't take you all the way. I've always tried to get the students to understand that talent fades, and you can lose it. And if people say, well, that doesn't really happen, well, look at some of the Star Wars films. but and I'm not trying to knock Lucas. What I'm saying is that over time, that mojo he had, that he incredibly wielded, it slipped away.
Yeah.
And that happens. But skill can stay sharp if you keep working on it. Skill can get you past those moments where it's. I always tell my students my resume gets smaller and smaller because the more physical attributes I lose, well, I take the skills that those attributes needed off, but I've gained enough skills on the other half that I can continue to do things even though I can't muscle through it. I understand how it's being done well enough that I can get you through there. And it's kind of like you look at the 40-year-old quarterback. He may not have the arm, but if he can look off a defender every single damn time, if he knows how to work a snap count where everybody's still jittery, if he can audible because he sees what's going on, well, that changes everything. The last one I can give that really sums this up, and I think this one has always been quite beautiful. There was an article, and it was actually in Sports Illustrated. It was published in the 1970s, I believe, and it was called Pitcher in the Rye. And the reason this article was so fascinating, Joseph Diefenbacher, who is a clown in Britain today. In fact, if you saw the London Olympics, he was part of the opening and closing ceremonies. But the reason I'm dwelling on this one is that he took the article and he replaced the word pitcher with clown. And it became one of the most fascinating articles I had ever seen. He sent it to me. And it talked about the fact that, all the other players, where they're going to throw the ball, basically. They're all meant to throw the ball to each other. But a pitcher is deliberately deceitful. You don't know where the ball's going. And you think you know where it is, and then it's by you again. And basically by the end of the article, it talked about, at the end of the day, the great pitchers do real magic because they meet our expectations, and then they deliver something different.
At the same time.
Yeah, they present the obvious and they deliver the unexpected.
Simultaneously.
You're expecting a changeup, and next minute, something whizzes by you, and that's part of what being a good performer is that the audience comes in expecting one thing, you present something, and then it goes further.
And that's why this has been the best podcast we've ever done.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's been remake stuff.
Well, yeah, Adam's heard all this before.
Yeah, well,
It's really good,
these
though,
are my
because-
greatest hits.
All right. Very good.
No, it's really good. Like I'm interested to go back and listen to this podcast.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it, and we definitely want you to be on again. And we've gone a pretty good ways, but we've got a lot in tonight. And
I had no idea. You could just was like, you should go do this, and here I am plugging
well, we never
away.
know. We try not to be too stringent where it goes.
and-
We never know what happens.
Yeah, you never know where it's going to end up.
Feel free to come join along as I'm out of town.
And Bill, there's going to be some overlap there, isn't there? Where you're gone and he's gone.
Where's he going?
He said the next 4 weeks.
Is
Oh, really? I didn't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's-
that's
He's
right.
going to be in his class.
He's starting to prep for dad.
Yeah.
His dad class.
His lactating class.
That's hard to learn. It was tough for me the first few weeks.
It takes about 4 weeks to learn how to milk Bill.
Huh. I hope.
You just
I
got to
wish
get
him
a
the
good
best of
pump.
Right.
luck. I got a bicycle pump. But I don't know.
I think Siri got
that
one of
might
those too
work.
for him.
So we'll just close it for tonight. We appreciate Michael, and you come back anytime.
My only advice is
Okay.
never take a laxative and a sleeping pill in the same evening.
Smart.
That's brilliant.
That is smart.
And my advice is also Michael's advice.
You can't steal his.
Well, it's a different one.
Oh.
Even the genius has to take a shower.
Even the genius has to take a shower.
Okay.
My advice is the
Oh
The advanced
aristocrats.
The advanced techniques are simply the basics mastered.
Okay.
Kevin, what's your advice?
Kevin, we're not putting you on the spot.
I'm on
or
the
anything.
We've
spot
all
now.
given advice.
You
I know
gotta
good.
give-
I got to give one
Use
now.
the force, Kevin.
Give me the. Let me use the force. Okay.
Are you just reading the back of the beer can?
Yeah. My advice is fine Pilsner.
Which is actually located in the Czech Republic.
Right, in the Czech Republic. But
Well, I'm at 'em.
Don't sweat the petty things.
yeah, don't sweat the petty.
And it's
and
all
don't pet
petty
the sweaty
things.
I don't agree with that.
I object to that completely.
Yeah.
You
me
like to
too.
pet the sweaty
Okay,
things?
here's my advice. I just remembered. Okay, it kind of finally came
Go ahead,
to me.
Kevin.
Do not live in a storage unit. Think about that.
That advice sucks.
The hole's only enemy is a pile.
Okay, yeah.
That's
In other words, don't
In
get
other
too
words,
much
it's
crap in
getting
your
deep
house.
in here.
How?
Well, we're going to close it out. For Zenybody Here podcast, I'm Kevin.
I'm Adam.
Ciao.
Ciao.
I'm Tim.
Is it bye?
Bye.
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 Okay.
That concludes part 2 of the Michael Williams interview. Is anybody in here for May 30, 2018 with Adam Baker, Bill Wilkerson, Kevin Traylor, and Tim Alcatort. And you can email us anybody in here at zenybodyinhere@gmail.com. Facebook is Anybody In Here podcast. Webpage is zenybodyinhere.com. Send a voicemail or text at 256-401-7140. That's 256-401-7140. And support Anybody In Here. Go to patreon.com and look us up. Thanks for listening.